going on, everybody? Welcome to PFF's live NFL preview show, Week 18 edition. We got one seeds to talk about. We got some wild card matchups that we're finally going to get to, preview teams that got to win those still. And, of course, we also have some crazy lines, crazy spreads, because teams are resting people. We'll get you caught up on all of that, no matter what your team is currently doing, draft picks included. So glad you guys are here hanging out with us. Here on the desk with me, I have Sam Monson, Ian Hartitz, and Eric Eager. Fellas, how we doing? Regular season finale show. We made it to the finish line, and it is going to be a wacky week for a lot of different reasons. How are we feeling today?
Week 18. Weird. Not normal.
No.
Don't.
It's the new normal, Sam. Get ready for it.
It's true. You got to get there.
I feel like that was a small microcosm of the political social climate that we're into. That whole conversation right there could have been about literally anything. Ian?
I just know I easily have like hundreds of pounds of weights on my back during the show because I got all these fantasy teams to worry about afterwards. They're all done, guys. So
you're burden-free.
So what?
You're burden-free.
Thank you. Exactly. So now I can be loose out here.
Liberated.
Bring my A game. Let's
go.
Yeah. Some sickos do Week 18 championships, but that's why I just stopped my fantasy analysis after last week. That's your problem.
Is that like how you know somebody's like a square in the fantasy industry where they're like, hey, Ian.
It just goes to as serious as possible. He just goes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Week 18. Look, Week 18. 2 out of 3. Cooper Kupp. And it's like the brokest lineup.
Why would you do it to
time.
yourself? Like, don't put kickers in your league and don't have a Week 18 championship. That's all I can say.
Yeah. He's a liberated man. So Ian's going to be absolutely off the handle. We're going to get some fantasy awards. We're going to do a lot of different awards that we're doing here on the show, as well as previewing things for all the teams. We also have Kendall Valenzuela here with us. She is checking out all of your comments, all of your replies, everything in the YouTube chat. Kendall,
hello.
How are you feeling on this
Feeling
Sunday?
good. The chat is already alive and well, ready for whatever you guys are going to throw at them. So Week 18, it's going to be chaotic.
I have a rundown in front of me, and I don't even know what this show is going to be. There's so many different out-of-structure things that we're going to preview, all the crazy lines of who's playing, who's not, what does this mean, playoff implications, everything. So you guys picked a great show to tune into. Let's talk about a couple of the games that we had on Saturday. First one, Chiefs coming away with the dub in Denver, sending Vic Fangio packing, because as of a couple of minutes ago, Vic Fangio out as Denver Broncos head coach. Chiefs still alive for the 1 seed. They need a little bit of help. Obviously, Tennessee still has to lose. They're still in that spot right now. But, Eric, what'd you think about your Chiefs getting the win on the road yesterday?
Yeah, PFF Greenline gives Houston a 17% chance to win today against Tennessee at home. That's basically the exact probability that the Chiefs have to get the 1 seed. Otherwise, it goes to the Titans for the first time since 2008. Be Kerry Collins Titans getting the 1 seed that year. I don't think that they were impressive. I don't think that they looked very inspired. For the second straight week, they weren't tackling anybody, and they were leaving their corners one-on-one with the talented wide receivers. Drew Lock took advantage of some of the man coverages they have and ran the ball. And yet, they got really lucky, right? They got lucky. Melvin Ingram, a midseason acquisition, made a huge hit on Melvin Gordon. Nick Bolton, a second-round pick.
Right there.
Yeah, running that thing back for a touchdown, and then ultimately the Chiefs salted, like they did a ton of times last year. 11-point favorites don't cover the spread, but they salt the game away at the end, up by 1 score. That kind of felt a lot like the 2020 team. So I don't know, like this team has so far been the worst Mahomes team, I would say. But with a little bit of luck today, they can still get the 1 seed.
Sam, what did you think about this game that we saw yesterday? Clearly, it was a final fight from Vic Fangio, and then what do you think about the news that he is out in Denver now?
Yeah, Denver really threw that game away yesterday. Like they were in the ascendancy, they were driving, they were potentially going to put another score on the board, which would have put Kansas City in some trouble, albeit with some time on the clock and the ball back to answer. And then it was a Broncos blown blocking assignment. Like they left Melvin Ingram wide open to run into the backfield, nail the running back, force the fumble, and then that's all she wrote. They scoop, they score, and that's basically the game. So, like, Denver were the architect of their own demise in that game after playing pretty well. Like, their defense, for the second time, caused Kansas City some real problems.
Drew Lock did things.
Drew Lock did some things. Not always good, not always bad. Just did some things. That's Drew Lock.
What do you think about Fangio?
I think he got screwed, to be honest. Like, look, I'm not a massive Vic Fangio stan as a head coach. I'm not going to go out there and say he's done the best job in the world. Like, he kicked the field goal late in that game for what reason? Like, there was no purpose to it, right? But ultimately, the man has been fired because the team hasn't had a quarterback in the last few years, and that isn't his fault. So Like, how can you expect a defensive-minded head coach to make miracles happen if you're not only are you not giving him a quarterback, but you're actively like passing up opportunities to get him one, right? No, in the draft, we're going to get Patrick Surtain, and then here's Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. Figure it out.
But Sam, I'm not going to pretend to say that I know how those conversations go. But I do think that's the problem with defensive first head coaches, right? Which is, unless the guy goes out of his way, like a Brandon Staley, to be super woke about stuff, like that's how a defensive coach is like, hey, they walk in, they're like, hey, Mike Zimmer, you cool with this guy? He's like, yeah, my defense, you know, like, or Vic Fangio, yeah, like, do you think that
Vic was cool with them rolling into the season with two crappy quarterbacks?
Hell no.
No way. Like, Vic, do you think they went in his office like, hey, if we give you, because the issue is they've had terrible quarterback play.
Yeah.
Year one it was Joe Flacco and Drew Lock. Last year it was Drew Lock and God knows what. And then this year it was Teddy Bridgewater
And
Drew Lock.
There it is. Okay.
I think these teams get in the trap of saying, look, Vic, you're an amazing defensive coach. If we just bridge you this year, Bridgewater, right? Can you get to the playoffs? It's like, oh yeah, I can. My defense is good.
I mean,
and it's like your defense can't get off the field because defense is random as hell.
If that was the conversation, though, they've like sold him a bill of goods, right? Because it's like, hey, look, you're gonna have some time. You've got a few years here, and if we give you the choice of, just get through this season with these quarterbacks, get yourself the corner, and then we'll get you one next year.
It's almost never true, right? When you look at the NFL.
Realistically, the decision was, hey, Vic, you've got 1 year, and if you don't make the playoffs or if something good doesn't happen, you're fired. Do you want a cornerback or a quarterback? Like, that was the decision he was given.
I wonder how much he was even given.
That's the thing.
That's
assuming he had the input.
Right.
So the best scenario here is that they essentially told him something that wasn't really true.
Yeah.
The worst scenario is that he wasn't even told. They just didn't give him a quarterback, and then he's being
you're
blamed.
You're 0-6 against Kansas City. The Broncos have lost 13 consecutive games against the Chiefs, right? Like, and you now play in a division with Justin Herbert, who's one of the best young quarterbacks in football, and Derek Carr, who's a pretty damn good quarterback. And if you're Vic Fangio and you look at gestures at everything, and you're like, oh, Teddy Bridgewater. Like,
he said it. He said it at the podium yesterday. He's like, yeah, the other teams in our division have good quarterbacks,
right.
basically.
And I guess my issue would be, and I guess this is always the problem when you have a head coach who maybe is, because like he's not a young guy. This is not going to be like for Brandon Staley. I'm being a little bit like facetious in comparing the two, because if Brandon Staley is going to get another head coaching job after this one if he fails, right? And for an older guy, for a Zimmer, for a Fangio, for a guy who's older, who's defensive minded, maybe they think that this is their one shot, and they said, if I stir the pot too much, I'm going to get fired. I'm never going to get another shot. But I think the right thing, and maybe this is a lesson for the next defensive minded coach who gets a head coaching job, pound the table for a quarterback, because you're not. Because if you play the company line for 3 years and your defense plays well, and all indications is Denver's defense played well over the last 3 years, right? It's not enough in this league, and it's especially not enough in the AFC West.
The conspiracy theorist in me believes that. I do think they kind of screwed over Fangio a little bit, and what I think they're going to do is I think they're basically going to go into this offseason basically tell Aaron Rodgers, who do you want as your head coach? Come to Denver, we'll win a Super Bowl. Now, obviously a lot of things could happen in Green Bay. If they win a Super Bowl, maybe Rodgers sticks around. I don't know exactly how mended the relationship behind the scenes is, but the deep dive YouTube conspiracy theorist in me believes that is what is going on.
Hold on, guys.
You like elk meat?
Yeah, the elk meat conspiracy theorist in me believes that.
You guys don't think Drew Lock is a long-term answer. That's kind of what I'm getting here.
No. But was he entertainingly bad?
Always. Like, here's the thing. Teddy Bridgewater, if it's 3rd and 8, like Teddy Bridgewater might get you 4 yards. Drew Lock is not even going to get you 4 yards, but at least he throws it deep, like a cool incompletion or something. So 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. That's all I got.
All right, so the other game that happened, Cowboys 50, Philadelphia Eagles 26. Now, the Eagles weren't really playing anybody. They had already clinched a playoff spot, and so they were like, okay, we're doing what we need to do to prepare for the playoffs. But, Ian, I mean, on the other side of things, did the Cowboys do exactly what they needed to do to prepare for the playoffs as well.
think-
50 points, 5 touchdowns for Dak.
I think we were all like, why the hell are these starters still out there, even in the first quarter to the fourth quarter of the game? But based on them not having had the injuries happen and, watching Dak go out there, set the all-time franchise passing record, and for all you 17-game people out there, he missed one, so he did accomplish that feat in 16 games. I mean, it worked out about as well as you possibly could have hoped for if you're a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, and I think the thing is like this entire discussion, we'll talk about it probably soon here, but we are undervaluing the 2 seed, right? And like Dallas does have a path to that 2 seed. I know it requires Tampa Bay to lose to a bad Carolina team, and the Rams and the Cardinals both to lose. So there's not a huge chance of it. But I think lost in the discussion yesterday was, what do these teams have to play for? Which I agree with mostly. Like the probabilistic thing to do, you're maybe more likely to get a key guy hurt than to get the 2 seed. So I don't necessarily but I can see the upside of both teams playing it out yesterday, because the 2 seed, the only difference between it now and then is you have to play the first round. Right. It has all the other benefits, which is you have to play at most 1 road playoff game. If the 1 seed in your conference screws up, you get to host the title game in your conference. Like, it has a ton of benefits. So I can see both teams yesterday, Dallas and Kansas City, playing through.
And Dallas were playing for more reasons than just a 2 seed. Like, this was a team that hadn't been right on offense for a number of weeks. And it's a great data point for literally just playing well against doesn't matter who, right? Throw out any 11 guys. Simply playing well and executing on offense is useful, and we can carry that in. It's momentum. It's all those things that people say. And there's not a ton of evidence one way or the other that it works, that it doesn't work. But this is a great data point for, like, they obviously believe that simply playing well, regardless of the opposition, is a good thing to build, like, to get back on track and go into the playoffs and, have confidence and be able to play well against, like, the proper team that they're going to play in a week.
So let's look at the NFC playoff picture then. We can see exactly where the Cowboys are. The Packers have that coveted number 1 seed, but as you can see right there, Cowboys, they are 12-5, but they obviously have the final game under their belt. The Bucs still have to play. They're 12-4, so obviously they can jump the Cowboys for the 2 seed. The Rams are sitting there right there at 11-5. They have a game yet to play. Eagles, they're the 7. 49ers, they're the 6. Guys, how do we feel about those teams right now as we see them seated in the NFC? Who do we have the most confidence in, minus the Green Bay Packers, who are getting the bye?
The matchup here is interesting, and it does require a Niners win, which actually kind of, like, the interesting thing is there's a very good chance this is not going to be the bracket, right? Because if the Niners win, by definition, it's going to be against LA, right? And Arizona's favored this week against Seattle, and if those two things happen, the Cardinals win, then the Rams and the Cardinals flip, and that's an issue. But I do think, like, San Francisco 49ers are a team that if they get in, right, and they face any team but the Bucs, they're going to be live. If they face the Bucs, the newly minted contract of Vita Vea, I think, demonstrates this a lot. That's the team they match up with the least well. And so that's an interesting one, and it's one where the Bucs, who lose out on a bye, lose out on even the 2 seed probably, that would be a nice matchup for the Buccaneers, trying to defend their Super Bowl title.
The 49ers playing the Rams in the first round of the playoffs with the history and having swept them in the season would be a hell of a sort of psychological foundation for that game going in. The Rams not being able to beat that 49ers team for years now. And the 49ers obviously on a roll and a good team, giving most teams problems. 49ers
only team on that bracket who haven't clinched it yet. Even though the Eagles are lower in seed, they have clinched the playoffs. It's going to be between the 49ers and the New Orleans Saints, which we are going to get to in a little bit. But we do have to preview the AFC as well. As Eric mentioned, he talked about the Chiefs still being within striking distance of that number 1 overall seed. But as of right now, the Tennessee Titans have. They're, I guess, projected. They're projected to have it. They played one last game. So I guess the Chiefs do have it as of this very second, but the Chiefs are in control of their own destiny, if you will. If they win today, they're going to get the 1 seed. We've got the Chargers, the Bengals, the Colts, the Patriots, the Bills. Man, those seem like, to me, the most fun teams to make the playoffs from the AFC. What do you guys think?
Yeah, this is honestly, this is probably not how it's going to end up, because the Titans, as we said, have an 83% chance to win today against the Houston Texans. The Chargers are favored by 3 in Las Vegas against the Raiders tonight in Chris's game. Colts also favored by a house against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think this would be kind of cool, right? You have Bills Patriots, who are a rivalry, have been for years.
That would be an incredible week one.
That would be a fun first round of the playoffs. And strangely, Bengals Colts, like, it's a low-key rivalry in the sense of, like, Indianapolis and Cincinnati are like 2 hours away from each other.
Local.
So that'd be kind of fun. And then obviously the Chargers and the Titans would represent, I think, two different kind of like styles of play. Obviously, if the Chiefs were to be in that 2 seed, it's even more fun because it's a third game between the two like barn burners in the first part. But Titans ground and pound. Chargers terrible against the run, right? But then they have Justin Herbert, who's clearly a better quarterback in that game. So I think basically however you slice in the AFC, but specifically this bracket would be a lot of fun.
I would love to see these exact matchups other than just flip Kansas City and the Titans. Because I want to see the Titans get a little bit healthier.
Yeah.
I want to see Derrick Henry come back. I want to see A.J. Brown. I want to see that team fully get healthy because I think that they would be more fun if you give them a week of rest as well. So that, I agree with you. That is a fun bracket right there as it shapes up.
Well, it'll be especially fun to see who the Titans and Colts are able to play because we've talked about it. With Taylor and Henry, if they give you the right punch, during the week, I think they can take down some of these teams that aren't as strong against the run. You look at the Chargers, the Bills, even the Chiefs, for portions of this year, they might be built, you say it's just a good matchup for them.
Yeah.
They could rip off a couple straight.
Yeah, I think especially in the AFC, the Titans, the Colts, in the NFC, the Niners, like they're teams that I think represent a unique enough sort of set of schemes that they can beat the best teams. And that's where I think if you're a fan of a team who's like not quite the 1 or 2 seed, but has a great quarterback, say Buffalo, you, I think, are a little bit more encouraged about that because one of those top teams could lose to one of those. But I don't think the Colts could win like 3 games in a row in the playoffs. But I do think they can beat one of the top teams and then pave the way for a team like the Chargers with a great quarterback, the Bengals with a great quarterback, the Bills with a great quarterback, or somebody like Arizona who has a great quarterback. Like, pave the way for a lesser seed to win the Super Bowl because some of the bigger seeds lose random games against teams that are more physical, sort of play a brand of football that wins one random game in January.
I mean, this is the flip side to the last, however many weeks we've all been saying, look, in the AFC, there's no great team, right? It's all these sort of teams that are close together, which means all of a sudden you get to the first round of the playoffs and every game is awesome because there's no, this team is way better than the other team. It's not even worth the contest. Every one of these games, almost regardless of how they end up, are going to be fun games because the teams are all so tightly bunched.
I agree with you. Let's talk about some awards. I know the NFL is going to give out their awards for Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, all that. We do the same thing over at PFF. Sam, you head up a lot of the awards that we give out. For MVP, we have our finalists. We've got Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert, and Josh Allen. Wow, a lot of positional diversity there, Sam. Well done. So those are
Cordell Patterson robbed.
Yeah, Cordell Patterson absolutely robbed. He should have at least made the graphic, right? I mean, put the man on the graphic. Come on. So we've got 5 quarterbacks. Obviously, we figured that would be the case. You feel pretty confident about these 5 being the 5?
Yeah, look, MVP is a quarterback award now, right? The NFL, football generally, it's so passing focused. The quarterback is the most valuable position. There's just no debating that right now. And if you look at PFF WAR, which is an attempt to quantify the value in play that each one of these players has, Jonathan Taylor, who's another guy that people would want to put in that discussion, he has a PFF WAR of just under 0.2, right? That would rank essentially dead last amongst quarterbacks. So
it'd be like Big Ben. Like you take Big Ben out, you put Mason Rudolph in for a season.
Or Jonathan Taylor.
I swear, if you tweet Jonathan Taylor, a.k.a. Big Ben, at any point, I'm blocking.
I'm just saying, like the orders of magnitude are like, if you take, like this is how bad Big Ben is. Like if you take him off the Steelers and grind out Mason Rudolph for 17 games, the Steelers are still probably where they are, right? Because they have a great defense, they have great weapons, all this kind of stuff. They have a great head coach. Like Big Ben's not changing things that much, right? But if you take Tom Brady off the Bucs and you put in Blaine Gabbert or Kyle Trask or something like that, like the rest of the Bucs team is good enough where they might win. They'll probably win 5 games less, right? And that's exactly what we saw, for example, when Brady went out in 2008. Like that team went from 16-0 to Matt Castle 11-5. Like it's exactly sort of what you saw, and that's like the magnitude of the quarterback position. The interesting thing, and the discussion I want to have, I think when people talk about WAR and value and stuff, Tom Brady has almost 200 more pass attempts than Aaron Rodgers, and almost like 1,000 more yards. Like the hard part about value is obviously if Brady were to leave the Bucs, they're not throwing the ball 680 times with Blaine Gabbert.
Sure.
So that's like baked into the WAR equation, where it maybe isn't for Green Bay, because Green Bay, despite having an amazing quarterback, leans on their run game, leans on, and they also just like play slower games. They play fewer plays. So that's one of the places where you can look and say, how the hell does Aaron Rodgers have a worse WAR than Brady? It's like, well, its style of play is really generating a lot of value for Brady specifically on this team.
Yeah. So outside of MVP, we also have another award here specific to PFF called the Dwight Stevenson Award, which is basically, from your own words, Sam, our Heisman, right? It's kind of like we're recognizing truly the best football player in the NFL. We kind of take value a little bit out of it. You can't totally take it out of a team game, but am I setting it up correctly, the Dwight Stevenson Award?
It's the best player, which is what the MVP award should be, which is what it is in any other sport, by and large. We're attempting to credit the single best player in the NFL, regardless of position, unless you're a special teams guy, in which case we don't care.
See, this is where I don't get it, Sam.
Don't care.
Eliminate Justin Tucker out of it.
Justin Tucker plays like 5 snaps a game. Don't
He's
care.
not even
it's not
a football
football
player.
See, there you go. Ian gets it.
The 5 finalists that we have for the Dwight Stevenson Award, which...
Well, hang on. First, we have to explain who Dwight Stevenson is, because you don't know.
Can you do that really quick?
Yes. Look, Dwight Stevenson is widely regarded as one of the best single football players of all time.
Okay.
Only played in the NFL for 8 years. But in those 8 years, was a 4-time All-Pro, a one-time second-team All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, was on the all-1980s team, was on the 100th anniversary NFL team that they did. It was a longtime center for the Miami Dolphins, and was just a dominant force on the line. One of the best players to ever play the game, but he doesn't have a video game with his name on it, so nobody knows him anymore.
So you're putting respect on his name by naming the award after him for the best true player that might be the best football player out there, maybe doesn't get the recognition. You guys saw it on the screen right there, the finalists that we have: Trent Williams, Devontae Adams, Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett, Cooper Kupp, and Joel Bitonio. So
once again,
a lot of...
Where's CPAT?
That's true.
But here's a question I have, because I
football player, I mean, the guy plays safety.
He wants to play safety.
Look, as a former blocking tight end, I love giving everybody appreciation, okay? But my issue is there's no quarterbacks on that list. Like, is it because it feels like a quarterback exclusive award, or excluding all quarterbacks, right? Because clearly Brady and Rodgers belong in the best player discussion. Like, why aren't they on this list? Do you think that Trent Williams has played better at his position than any quarterback in the NFL has this year?
Yes.
That's how, okay.
By a significant margin.
Okay.
I mean, they're not on this list for the same reason many other great players aren't in this list. It's a short list of 5, and 3,000 players play in the NFL. There's a lot of guys who are going to miss the cut. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's an exclusive club, Eric. There's 5 people.
Can't let everybody in.
There was a guy named, Cyril Grayson, that caught a touchdown from Brady last week to win a game.
Put some damn respect on his name.
That's what I'm saying.
Some guy.
Some guy. You know who you're talking about here?
I don't.
Antonio Brown out here taking his shirt off, and Cyril Grayson just looking on the sideline
Brady's just out here
all
right, guys, I'm just going to beat the Jets again. And I think Brady belongs in the list. That's all I'm saying. Have we gone too far?
No.
The Overton window swung too much, Sam.
No. Look, I will grant you that if there's a side to err on whether we exclude quarterbacks or whether we include quarterbacks, given the way MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, et cetera, exists, let's err on the side of excluding them and reward.
I've never heard somebody say but I like it. Are you going to call me Eric from now on?
No.
Okay.
And, reward the big uglies. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Rewarding the big uglies does go with Eric.
Wow.
Damn.
We
get
can't
roasted. Folks! Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to get you ahead on both your fantasy and financial scoreboards. You can do so by asking any kinds of questions. Whether you want to ask questions to Chris about his day's playing or with Sunday Night Football, or maybe you want to get your financial goal questions answered from the Western and Southern folks, you can do that as well. Every question you ask will also get you a ticket to maybe get a catered event for the big game. I'll just say it like that. The big game, you know what I'm talking about, in February. You can ask questions by going over to westernsouthern.com/askchris. That's westernsouthern.com/askchris. All your questions, no matter what they are going to be answered on Chris Collinsworth's podcast or Western and Southern's Instagram. Remember, guys, with Western Southern, you can rest assured on game day. We said that the 49ers were the only team in the NFC that hasn't clinched in that playoff picture. Now let's talk about the team that could spoil it for them, or at least take that spot. That's the New Orleans Saints. Saints are playing Cordarrelle Patterson's Atlanta Falcons. There we go. We're getting them into the show early. This game's in Atlanta. Saints favored by a field goal and a half, 3.5 points. Sam, what do we think? Can the Saints do it, put themselves in playoff position with a win?
I think they can. The Falcons' offense is fascinating because it's built on these unicorn athletes. The great Cordero Patterson.
Thank you.
The great athlete, Kyle Pitts. Like, these are ridiculous players that nobody else can replicate. That there's nobody on your team can do what they do on, in the scout team during the week to prepare for them. And the Falcons have tapped into moving those guys over the formation, to having Patterson in the backfield, to splitting him out wide, to lining him up wherever. And the same thing with Kyle Pitts. Like, their juggling act going forward is to make sure they sort of maximize the return on that, because Pitts in particular is just basically becoming a wide receiver. Like, the guy lines up in line as a tight end maybe 5 times a game, which is fine. Like, he might be a great number 1 wide receiver in general, but it does feel like you lose a little bit of the edge in him being this positionless matchup weapon by doing that. But now you get the Saints defense, which has been really good, which has been like throttling offenses recently. How do they match up with these just freak, completely unique athletes?
Ian, what do you think?
I do wonder. All right, first of all, I do not want to watch Taysom Hill play a playoff game. Like, let's get that out of the way.
We could all band around the Falcons for this very reason.
I think we can all agree with that. But with Taysom, this might be the matchup that he's looking for. We saw in his 4 stars last year, 2 of them came against his Falcons defense, and he looked pretty good with it. Because the one thing with the Falcons, they've allowed the 4th most rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks on the season. And a lot of times with these stats, you start to dive in more. It's like, oh, they face Lamar Jackson and these other, super high-end dual threat quarterbacks. Not really the case with them. So with Taysom, 8 career starts. He's had at least 10 rush attempts in 7 of those games. I mean, it's just one of those things where, as much as I would love to, put my heart and soul behind C. Pat and the gang, I do think Taysom might be, just a wild card that can win this specific matchup. And just with that in general, guys, how about Sean Payton? Like, why is he not getting a little Coach of the Year love here? Because with all the injuries they've had throughout, I think most different starters in NFL history, I believe, on this.
Well, I think it's because the awards basically like how much have you gone over your win total, right? That's why Zach Taylor's probably going to get some consideration, because they're 10 wins. Their win total going in was 6.5. And speaking of win totals, this game, the outcome is not just one that we can bet on today, but it's one we've been betting on since like March. The Falcons' win total this year, they currently have 7 wins, is sitting there at 7.5. With a win today, they go over that. And if you were a Falcons backer for the first time since Barack Obama was president, you are rewarded. And the New Orleans Saints are at 9 here. With a win, you could at least get a push. There are some people who also got 8.5, so you could also go over that with a Saints win.
Doesn't that tell you just from that where this game is going to go? Like,
well, the Falcons losing in spectacular fashion.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a few other ones that are big here. Houston Texans, this is the second time in 3 years a team that everybody thought was tanking and had like a really low win total. This one, a couple years ago, the Dolphins were at 4.5 or so. Dolphins went on the road, helped my Chiefs, and beat the New England Patriots to get their 5th win, put the Chiefs in a bye situation. The Houston Texans this year are in a position to go over their win total of 4 with a win today against Tennessee. A few other notable ones: Indianapolis at 9, that one's already a push. The Chargers at 9.5, they have to win today for you to win that over as well. And then Trey's Tampa Bay Buccaneers sitting at 12, right now pushing that number. If they win today, they go over for the 2nd straight year with Tom Brady.
There are also a handful of teams that have already hit their win total. You mentioned the Cincinnati Bengals, what it was in the preseason. We got the Arizona Cardinals with them, Bengals right there, Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Rams, New England Patriots, Philadelphia Eagles, and Tennessee Titans. All of those teams have already hit the over on their win total. Who's the most impressive among that list?
Well, I think there was no one more out to lunch during the offseason than the odds makers for the Packers, right? Because the Packers, they were sort of, and we have an article on PFF.com about we simulate the season in both scenarios, but like obviously Jordan Love, that win total 7.5, right? And there was a point in time when Rodgers was thinking of retiring where like Minnesota was the favorite in the NFC North. And then obviously once Rodgers is said he's going to play, 10.5 is a complete joke for the Packers, right? How good that team is, how bad that division is. So that was one, that was fairly solid. Obviously Arizona, Bengals at 6.5, that was one. Bengals were 25-1 in February to win the AFC North. So if you got that number early, congratulations there. A bunch of teams a team I bet under on that completely, made me look like a complete idiot. I bet under Philadelphia Eagles under 6.5, and they went to 9.
That looked good at the beginning of the year when
good,
Nick Sirianni didn't really know what to do on offense.
Exactly, and their defense, I still think is a problem. I don't think they're going to be hugely competitive in the playoffs. But kudos to the Eagles for putting together a winning football team this year.
Yeah, guys, if you want to see all the results from all those simulations, we've got other simulations on the site as well, not just playoffs, not just win totals, but also about the NFL draft as well. You can see exactly where your team is projected to pick. Use all of our tools over at PFF.com if you have yourself a subscription. We've got 2 different subscription models for you, Edge and Elite. Both of them different packages. One's more expensive than the other, but you'll be able to see exactly what you get with both. With Edge, you read a lot of those articles. You can get some of those tools, but an Elite subscription, you not only get all these simulations, you get the Green Line tool, you get the fantasy guide, the NFL draft guide. You also get access to all of the premium stats that are available to everybody. So just wanted to say, if you don't have that yet, go check it out. You can see all these simulations for yourself before you make your next best bets for next season's win totals for a lot of these teams. Next game that I want to talk about is that 49ers-Rams game. 49ers traveling to Los Angeles to face the Rams. It's big for these teams for a variety of different reasons. One, it's a divisional game, right? It's Kyle Shanahan. It's Sean McVay. There's a lot of pride on the line no matter what. Rams are fighting for playoff position. 49ers are fighting for their playoff lives. If the 49ers win, they're in. But if they lose, and the Saints also lose, they still get in. You never want to give it to be that too much of chance right there. Those 2 games are going on, I believe, at the same time. And so, what do we think about this one? Rams traveling to LA?
Yeah,
or the Niners traveling to LA?
Look, Matthew Stafford brought in to take them to the next level, to win a Super Bowl. The transformation of Matthew Stafford is becoming complete. He has become Detroit Matthew Stafford. Like, we've gone from lighting the league on fire, setting these insane numbers earlier in the season, leading the league in yards per attempt, to all of a sudden he's the same guy he's always been, just in a different uniform.
We've ripped off the Scooby-Doo mask.
Yes, and it's the same. It's still Matthew Stafford. PFF grade right now, 79. That ranks 14th in the NFL. It also ranks exactly where he's always graded in his entire life. It's like every other year of his Detroit Lions
Do you
career.
think like he was a C+ student in high school? Like, has it been that way the whole time?
No, it's higher.
79.2 in calculus.
But
It's
he's
like a
getting
B.
like A's and then like D's.
Yeah. He's volatile for sure.
We're averaging
Has
it
there
out.
been a 5-game win streak from a contending football team that people have universally sold more than this Rams team? I mean, this team has won 5 in a row, right?
Well, it might have been if it is, it's the Chiefs' run. Like, they were at the lowest point the Chiefs had this season was off back-to-back wins.
Yeah. I mean, because this one, look, Stafford's second in the league in interceptions. He has the turnover-worthy plays to go along with that, although I think he's gotten a little unlucky recent weeks.
Higher in turnover-worthy play rate than his Detroit baseline.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I look at this team. They win a road game against Minnesota where Stafford throws 3 interceptions. They get a punt return for a touchdown. The defense plays pretty well. Then last week they win on the road, a tough road game where Stafford did have to make a play at the end against the Ravens team that doesn't have any good players anymore, but is well coached and all that. I kind of think of this Rams team, best case scenario, are like the 2012 Ravens, where 2012 Ravens get into the playoffs, quarterback's not playing well, but they get in, and everybody's kind of like, forget that team, they suck. And they kind of make a run because they do have the goods. I mean, Aaron Donald is worth 1 WAR this year, which is not what a position player should be worth. Von Miller's obviously great, has won a Super Bowl before. Cooper Kupp is one of the best wide receiver seasons in NFL history, and Sean McVay's a great coach. This team, and I've been selling the Rams all year, but I come up for air, I'm like, are we all sleeping too much on this team?
I mean, it all comes down to Stafford, right? The Ravens game is a perfect example. He was good enough at the end to just about pull his way out of the hole that he dug in the first place. Yeah. Matthew Stafford has the highest passer rating in the NFL in the fourth quarter. It's 126. Yeah. He's the best graded quarterback in the fourth quarter.
He's the arsonist that puts out his own fire.
Exactly.
He's like Andrew Luck.
So the question is, in the postseason, how big a hole are you going to dig before you start to climb your way out of it? Because against teams like Minnesota, against a battered Baltimore team, it's fine. It's okay. You've got enough in the tank to get over the hump. But against the 49ers this week, or against the best teams in the postseason, Like, you can't have 3+ turnover-worthy plays in the game before you start to play.
Well, we saw that in their last game in San Francisco against the Rams. I believe they were 3.5-point favorites at close, and they lost that game outright because in many ways Stafford played so horrendous at the beginning. There was a pick sixes, there were the interceptions, and ultimately the Niners are able to sort of like when the Niners get a lead on a team, I don't think there's a better team in the NFL that extends it, right? They run the football well, the perfectly blocked run plays. Elijah Mitchell's been great on those, and the Rams have light enough boxes where they can take advantage of that. And that's where I think when you look at this Niners team and why they've won 5 straight games against the Rams and covered the last 3 times they've played, I think this is one where you do have to just take the Niners plus 4.5 and hope that the quarterback play is good enough for them to win that game, because I do think all the shenanigans that the Rams do to beat teams like Minnesota, to beat teams like a battered Baltimore, will not work today.
And how about Elijah Mitchell? I mean, coming in as a rookie, and I know he benefits from the Shanahan run scheme and the great offensive line, but 205 touches this year without a drop or a fumble. Devontae Freeman's at 160. Those are the only guys over even 60 touches this year. So we always talk about the Shanahan doghouse. Mitchell has never given them a chance to even come close to that. And really, he has benefited from the big lanes. But this one stat I like to look at, because yards after contact can be skewed sometimes. You break a tackle at the line, run for 60 yards after contact. But just in terms of running backs, highest percentage of carries with at least 2 yards after contact, our guy A.J. Dillon's number 1. But 5th place is Elijah Mitchell. Might be the running back of the future.
Yeah.
So you're taking Niners
plus
getting the points.
4.5, yep.
I would take the Niners getting the points. I think the divisional game, like I said, there's a lot on the line anyways. I think it's going to be a little bit closer. What do you think? You taking the points? What are you doing, Sam?
Niners, yeah. I'm not trusting Matthew Stafford until he shows me a reason to do so.
Okay. Ian?
I got the Rams, because why not?
Okay. All right. So, all right. Being a little bit different. Folks, Best Ball is back for the playoffs over at underdog.com. Up until the 15th, the end of the wild card round, what you can do is you can go over to underdogfantasy.com or the Underdog Fantasy app, and you can draft the players that you think are going to score the most points in the playoffs. It's that simple. And then Underdog Fantasy will optimize your lineup for you. In doing so, you can win thousands in cash prizes. If you use the promo code PFF when you sign up, you will get up to a $100 match on whatever your deposit is there over at UnderdogFantasy.com and the Underdog Fantasy app. Go check it out. Have some fun this playoffs. Get yourself a best ball team. Enjoy it. Those are a lot of fun. Like I said, UnderdogFantasy.com, Underdog Fantasy app. All right. Next playoff game. It's on the next page. Should have been more prepared for that. Ian, we're doing fantasy awards.
Yeah, buddy.
Forgot, that was a segue. It was the easy one. That's the one that I forgot.
We're here now, though.
We are here now. You mentioned it's
all about the destination.
Sometimes the journey is the end. You mentioned that the weight is off of your back.
Yes.
That fantasy season is over. So now it's time to recap some of the players that played well for us, the heroes, the unsung heroes, and I want to start with your most valuable fantasy player. The guy at the top, the guy who all season carried some teams, likely helped some people hoist some trophies at the end of the season. Who's your fantasy football MVP this year?
2-man race between Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor. Gotta give it to Cooper Kupp. This season is just bonkers. We all know Cooper Kupp's been great, has a chance to join Rice, Sterling Shepard, Steve Smith as a true Triple Crown winner. But guys, he's only 1.2 PPR points away, full point per reception, from passing 1995 Jerry Rice for the most productive fantasy season ever. And okay, 17 games, I get that. And it's the second best season ever. Like, just remove that from the equation. I mean, these numbers are truly just bonkers.
He's literally walking away from Antonio Brown on the graphic there.
Jeez.
It is absolutely insane what he's been able to do week in and week out. And to see the floor, too, guys. I mean, he's had over 90 receiving yards in all but one game this year. Just no one's been touching him all year long.
What about the best player in a championship game performance? So is this just week 17, week 16 as well? Is it both of those combined?
Just week 17.
Okay.
In the past, it's been week 16. So I went through and just looked at the top fantasy championship performances ever.
This probably didn't take you too long to find out who was going to win this year.
So top 3 end of season performances ever. 1995 Jerry Rice, 2020 Alvin Kamara, we all remember the 6 touchdown game in the Christmas cleats, and 2021 Jamar Chase. Trevor, like we were talking last week, like who we thought might define the fantasy playoffs, and you said Tyler Boyd, which I thought was a decent enough call.
I was right. Same stadium.
Same stadium.
I was in the same stadium.
You have to remember that Jerry Rice game. That was on a Monday night game. Al Michaels, Dan Dierdorf, and I think he went against Minnesota. It was like 14 for 244 and 3. They could not cover. I don't even know why I remember that game, but I do remember Jerry Rice played the stupidest game I've ever seen in my life. And crazy that
that's what Jamar Chase just did.
Yeah, Jamar
too.
Chase just did that same exact thing. We were there.
We were there. And I will never forget Eric's face, noted Chiefs fan, Eric Eager, when Jamar caught that 3rd and 27. When it was basically like, okay, all we have to do is not give up a 3rd and 27.
I mean, look, I'm not a defensive coordinator in the NFL, and there's a reason why that's true. But it's pretty easy to not give up 3rd and 27. I mean, nobody's giving me the opportunity.
That moment was Joe Burrow said after the game. He literally said it was the meme. F it, Jamar's down there somewhere, and that was the entire day. And he came up with catch after catch after catch. What about the most improved fantasy player?
So this one is not biased. I've tried to do all this like analytically.
Yeah, of course,
it's Cordero Patterson. Just in terms of 2020 to 2021, most fantasy points, just an improvement. Only Cordero Patterson and Cooper Kupp averaged double-digit an increase in that. And I think we all know Kupp, with the MVP, probably doesn't also need the most improved player. But Cooper Kupp was at least someone that was a borderline wide receiver too, at worst, throughout the first part of his career. Guys, like Cordero Patterson from 2014 to 2020 scored 11 offensive touchdowns. That's how many he scored this year alone. So I know he didn't have the hottest end of the season, but to see Cordero Patterson, in his 9th or 10th year in the league, truly become an offensive playmaker, I loved every second.
Who is that person in NFL history? Is there anybody like Patterson in NFL history?
It's going to be Laviska Shenault in like 8 more years.
Okay, gotcha. So
he's going the full.
So you have a T-shirt. You have a T-shirt made right now that says like, "This is the year," and like it has Laviska Shenault.
I'll give you a defensive version. Jason Babin broke out.
I remember
became
that,
like an elite pass rusher after like 8 years.
Yeah, but like who? Like
Brandon Lloyd, kinda.
Yeah, Lloyd had that 1 year where
huge year.
They had the press conference when he made the Pro Bowl for the Broncos. You want to say anything to any of your former teams? Like, yeah, F you. That was the best, one of the best ones. But yeah, Lloyd was an interesting one. But like the Patterson one's crazy because he was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Like he was a first-round pick, and then mired in obscurity, being elite at like NFL history elite at one thing for like 10 years, and then just like becoming an offensive player. I don't like. It's crazy.
Like he's only still in the league because he's the greatest kick returner of all time.
Besides maybe
Otherwise,
Gale Sayers.
He'd be out of there, and he wouldn't have had this opportunity to jump and become a playmaker.
All right, what about fantasy comeback player this year? Who's winning that award?
For this, I just did first half fantasy production versus second half fantasy production. It was very awkward last year when I didn't name Alex Smith for this award, and social media guy kind of left me out to dry. So purely from the fantasy point of view, I think it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's caught at least 8 passes now in 5 straight games. Has a chance to get a 6th, and in fantasy football, I don't necessarily agree that this best reflects, real life, but when you get the full point for each of these receptions, I mean, the floor really was the ceiling for him during the second half of the year. Jared Goff, Tim Boyle under center, it didn't matter. Amon-Ra St. Brown just kept on balling out. Obviously, not having Swift, not having Hawkinson out there help matters, but this is one of the good things about fantasy, guys. Who has given a shit about the Lions most of this year? Dan Campbell, but not too many other people.
Right.
Amon-Ra St. Brown helped win some.
Dan Campbell, great quote on PFF Instagram. It said he's like, we're in the Arctic right now, but we're on our way to the Caribbean. Talking about the path.
That's a great move.
I mean,
that's
is there a better philosopher right now in the world than Dan Campbell?
Probably.
Okay, I'm just asking.
He just had to ask the question. The answer is probably yes. Then finally, Rookie of the Year. Who is that player who maybe wasn't a first-round pick, second-round pick, but somebody took a chance on because it was our first year in the league. They said, this guy's going to break out and he's going to be good, and he made all the difference in the world.
It's still Jamar Chase. Najee Harris is a contender, but he was still a first- or second-round pick. Chase, we were all freaking about, maybe not we, I don't want to put myself in that. A lot of people were freaking out about those preseason drops, and he was going outside the top 20, 25 wide receivers before the season even got going. So Najee, you can make the argument for, but ultimately we have like fantasy points and expected fantasy points, so you can see the true like outliers and things like that. Only Deebo Samuel had averaged more fantasy points above expectation than Jamar Chase on the year. Meanwhile, Najee Harris was, the single least valuable fantasy player in terms of points below expectation. So Jamar Chase, 2 awards, great year to be great.
All right, before we get to our next game preview, want to check in on the chat. Kendall, what do we got going on in the chat? We got any questions for us?
Yeah, we do have a question. First of all, I will say that someone did comment saying they love our millennial show. So that was
Millennial Show.
Shots fired. Okay.
Wow.
I think it was good. No, he meant it to be nice.
Oh, okay.
He was like, I really like this. It caters to millennials.
Oh, like we're not super boomer.
No, yeah.
Okay.
You are, Eric.
Okay.
We're catering to millennials. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But the one question that we did get was, what would the Rams record be if it was Goff and not Stafford?
What is the record right now?
11-5.
Oh, that's that.
You think they're 11-5 with Goff and not Stafford? You liar. You're a liar.
What were they last year?
Yeah, what were they last year?
They're not. No, don't do this. Do not do this.
It's mostly a bit because Goff clearly stinks, but I said this I've said this on the forecast, but McVay is just he just started to try hard again. Like last year in February, the guy's at Salt and Straw, and he walks up, he's like, "Hey, I'll have a cone. By the way, my quarterback's so terrible. I got to tell him what to do with 15 seconds left." The guy was telling everybody how bad Goff was, and has Stafford been that much better?
Yes.
I don't know, Ian. You the fantasy production. Goff in 18.
Yeah, in 18 though. That wasn't 2020.
I don't know.
Okay, so that's my thing, because we're saying Jared Goff in 2018 was basically Matthew Stafford this year, but Jared Goff was really good in 2018. I know we've seen that crash back to earth, but I mean, all right. So I think the argument is
Goff went on the road to New Orleans and won a playoff game. In that, he played in a Super Bowl. These are all accomplishments that Stafford will never have.
But we're comparing the best version of Goff to just
Stafford's
Stafford.
not even a win Louisiana
He's
guy.
not even a win in Mercedes-Benz Superdome guy.
Clearly the best version of Stafford is better than the best version of Goff.
Yeah, Smoothie King Superdome.
And isn't that what we're chasing? I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about.
Don't pay any attention to us. The point of Jared Goff, and I can't believe I'm actually seriously talking about this point. The point about Goff versus Stafford is not that Goff couldn't win enough regular season games to win in the division or get into the playoffs. It's to win in the playoffs. That's what they are hoping.
Stafford has zero
That's
career
what they
playoff
are
notice.
Stafford
hoping.
achievement. Playoff wins.
Don't sit here 6 feet from me and tell me that you would rather have Jared Goff in a playoff game than Matthew Stafford.
I wouldn't do it. I would say if Jared Goff had been starting this year, John Walford would have at least 6 starts under his belt at this point. They would have benched him. He would have gone to somewhere else. But I do think that there is, there's
a wing of a bookstore that's dedicated to apologetics over Matthew Stafford.
Yes.
I wrote him. Buy the book. Buy an e-copy for your Kindle. My family is starving.
I mean, look. I think, and the Vikings ran into this with Cousins. The Browns have run into it with Mayfield. All these kind of and again, I think Stafford is the best of these guys. But these quarterbacks who are not elite, every single time a team backs the truck up for the guy, they try to run an offense that is not is not a hand-holding offense, and eventually, without fail, it fails, and then they have to come back and actually run an offense that caters to his strengths. Now, with Goff, you knew he was ass the entire time, so then you had to run that sort of hand-holding offense the whole time, but the results were still good! And, so that's my whole point. I think that's the difference, is McVay would be on his best behavior if he had Goff. He kind of let his hair down a little bit with Stafford, and that's why they're basically in the same place.
Wow. Wow, that's all I can say.
10-6 last year with Goff, by the way. Steelers Ravens.
Would be a game worse.
Let's move on.
Game worse.
They did. They were worse. They were worse. See, that's why. They were one game worse. Steelers Ravens. This game's in Baltimore. Boy, talk about two teams that are just trying to get to the finish line here. I mean, Big Ben's getting to the finish line of his career. Ravens are trying to finish this regular season with a win. It's been awful for the Ravens. They've been bitten by the injury bug worse than I think every team in the league. I know Ian brought up how many starters the Saints have been down throughout the season, but man, the Ravens just throughout the whole depth chart, it has been bad. Sam, does Big Ben get a win in his last game in Baltimore?
Oh,
Come
honestly,
on, give the people what they want.
Who cares?
Come on. Oh, okay.
Like,
all right.
the only thing anybody's playing for in this game is to get TJ Watt Defensive Player of the Year, which has got a pretty good chance of happening because the last time these two teams played, TJ Watt had 4 sacks, 11 total pressures. If he breaks the sack record, and what is he at, 1.5 away from that now?
I don't know. He needs Brett Favre to fall down.
Exactly, right? So if he breaks the sack record, that's the kind of watershed moment that just triggers something in people's brains. They go, oh, of course, he's defensive player of the year. He just broke the sack record. Whether or not, it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. He could have the same game, and Aaron Donald could have another 15 pressures. It won't matter because Donald won't break the sack record. So TJ Watt needs a sack and a half in this game against some terrible offensive linemen. Patrick McCarry's actually done okay at right tackle for them, but his level is a lot lower than stopping TJ Watt.
So Patrick McCarry earned a contract extension for this team. This is an interesting one. Home field advantage has been mostly null and void in the NFL, but the Steelers have their last 4 road games, they've been behind by 24 points in all of them at one point. They win their home games and then they go on the road and stink here. This is another one with win totals are a big deal. Steelers win total going into the year was 8.5. They're kind of exactly there if you can, but the win totals don't count ties as half a win. So if they were to lose here, you would get that bet to go under. If they win, you get that bet to go over. And for that reason, as a card-carrying member of Steelers under, I'm going to take Steelers plus 4.5 and try to get them to lose by 3, so I can win both bets.
A tie doesn't get you the half win?
No.
That's like Vegas and roulette, gaming the system with the 0 and the double 0. Just take a slight edge back to the house.
Yeah, well, there's one. That's why betting unders is generally better than betting overs in season win totals, because there's 1 or 2 ties a year, and when you actually go to Vegas, you add up the win totals. Oftentimes, they'll add up to more than the actual wins are, because fans of their team are like, "Hey, Chiefs over," and that's kind of the that's one just.
I think one of the bigger.
I was going to say I shouldn't have started the segment saying this will for sure be the last games for these teams, because there are playoff scenarios in which both of these teams can actually somehow still get in. For the Ravens, they'll clinch a playoff berth if they win, and the Chargers lose, and Indianapolis loses, and a Miami loss or tie. And then the Steelers, I have to do this. No. And then the Steelers clinch a playoff berth if they win, plus a Colts loss, and then the Vegas Chargers game just can't end in a tie. So this is one of those games where both the Chargers and the Raiders could be like, hey, let's screw over Pittsburgh.
That's the scenario.
Well, because both the Chargers and the Raiders have beaten the Steelers, so they all finish 9-7-1. Then there's that there's that cycle of dominance that eliminates the Pittsburgh and that tiebreaker that we never think that we get with Pittsburgh because they have a tie. But yeah, that's interesting one. Obviously, the one that the Ravens would want to have back, just kind of looking retrospectively at this year, was that they had that overtime win against Minnesota. They played the whole overtime, and then 3 days later they had to play the Dolphins. Right. Losing that game is probably what's keeping the Ravens out of the playoffs right now.
Ian?
I was going to say, just bigger picture, this great game aside, I know that we want to just keep talking about. This year, Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, and Joe Mixon were the only 3 running backs to hit 300 touches, and there's not really anyone close that's probably going to join that. That is easily the lowest mark of the last 20 years. Last year there was only 4, and that was the lowest mark. There were 19 running backs in the year 2000 that had over 300 touches. So I know committees are the new thing, but really more than ever, these 3-down running backs are a dying breed. I do wonder, if Najee, who... He had a fun stiff arm last week. He hurdles really well. I enjoy that. But let's face it, hasn't been the most impressive rookie. Is Jonathan Taylor and some of these numbers we're getting, are we ever even going to see 3-down running backs again, guys?
Well, I think that's the thing. It's 17 games aside, you're not going to see that many 2,000-yard seasons again. A guy's going to have to be a unicorn like Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor. And even Taylor's 250 yards away just because of what you said, where it's the volume thing. The question with Harris, moving forward is, we've seen this with Josh Jacobs taken in the back half of the first round. Great rookie year with a lot of volume. Can the guy keep it up? Because the running back position is one where you just take a beating. And, was it worth it for the Steelers to run him into the ground in a season where they're at best going to go 9-7? For the future, where once they get another quarterback in there, Harris has to be, Harris has to be one of their better offensive players. Does he have tread on the tires left over? He's an older back too. He's 24 now.
Oh yeah, Devontae Williams 2 years younger.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tough scene for Pittsburgh.
So we mentioned that this Pittsburgh-Baltimore game kind of hinges on what happens with Las Vegas and the Chargers as well. So that game, Chargers on the road, they're in Las Vegas, they're favored by 3. Chargers get in with a win or a tie. Can't get in with a loss. They get in with a win or a tie, can't get in with a loss. The Raiders get in if they win, or if they tie and Indianapolis loses, or if Indianapolis loses and Pittsburgh loses in a tie. So there's all sorts of things that go on. Essentially, winner gets in with this game. And Chargers lose, they're out. Vegas loses, they need a lot of weird-ass help. So with the Chargers being favored by 3, what do we think about this one? And kind of a winner get in. When you get in, we assume that there's not going to be a tie in this game. Who do we think ends up getting that playoff spot in the AFC?
Am I the only one that's rooting for the chaos of the mutually assured tie? We don't think that would be funny?
Well, we talked about this pre-show, how it would be hilarious if this game's set up to where results prior, both teams know, hey, all we have to do is tie and we both get in. Do you just have a secret handshake, hike the ball, stand there for 15 minutes, let the clock run out, take a knee, hike the ball again?
Nap in the middle of a live play.
Here's a question, though, because we saw last night where the Eagles took out Jalen Hurts and put in Gardner Minshew and a bunch of starters. Does the NBC crew do it? I wonder how great would that be if Al did the first quarter of the game? They know the game's meaningless because it's going to end in a tie. Tarico's coming in. Tarico's coming in. He's taking snaps. Comes in.
Time to get Jack
Chris. The problem is Chris is irreplaceable. He doesn't have a backup. We have not seen.
Well, we haven't seen one.
Doesn't
mean there isn't one there. Like maybe Jack could get some rest.
Does Chris go like the sort of rest of the game, even with the backup quarterback and Tarico?
Well, I mean, you can't pull all your starters.
Yeah.
I mean,
we got the camera guys.
If the camera guys are out, we got replacement camera dudes.
We get far enough down the depth chart that the guy that was holding Rodney's umbrella ends up color commentating.
Dude, Rodney, by the way, Rodney's picks this year have been way better. Does he pick a tie tonight?
Oh, it's true. Wow.
So I need somebody to get bold and pick a tie.
Pick the tie.
Pick the tie. So you're picking the tie.
I just want to see it. I want the scenario to set up where it's now beneficial for both teams to just play this out for a tie, because I think that would be hilarious. I think that would be the funniest possible thing that can happen in this game. Frankly, that's what I'm rooting for.
Do you think they'd still try, you know what I'm saying? Third and long, we're passing. Oh, I missed the guy. I threw it out of bounds.
But do they ever get to, the problem is much like last season, as much as you want to guarantee it, and they put out all division games in week 18 or 17, depending upon when's the last week of the year. No matter how you want to guarantee it, there's no guarantee that there's going to be one game where both teams have the same to play for, and it's win or in, right? So last year, we really wanted things to work out so that Washington and Philly was a game that both teams needed, and they didn't, and Philly decides to tank at the end, and it happens. Here, the really good chance the team that has to win, it's basically win and you're in.
Yeah.
But there's a small sliver of outcomes where it's not even guaranteed, and that's what the league, I guess, has to deal with.
You're essentially resting your players and tying and getting in the playoffs.
Plus, you're paying homage to a 16-game season, too.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Wouldn't the most Chargers thing ever, though, be to try to win the game but then accidentally tying?
Accidentally tying and then Oakland going over the top.
That would be the most Chargers way ever.
Oakland still kills me.
to actually design the tie to play all the way out, like the last play, the Raiders just sneak it behind the back or something, and Chargers lose.
What happens? So if Herbert, and this is a Herbert thing, Herbert's a fabulous quarterback, but this is a totally Chargers thing. He goes under center to take that last knee, right? Fumbles, and then it gets kicked, he kicks it back, and now the ball's laying around at the 1 yard line. Does the Vegas player say, we agreed to this, or does he, with the clock going to 0, dive into the end zone with it, and then get up, flip the bird to the whole Los Angeles Chargers sideline, and go into the playoffs at the 7th seed in the AFC?
You all want to see it as well.
So
I just don't know.
This back into reality here. I want to see the Chargers win. I'm sorry, Raiders fans. I do. I want to see Justin Herbert in the playoffs. I want to be able to set up that potential Mahomes versus Herbert matchup in the first round of the AFC playoffs, as long as the Titans can win as well and they get the 1 seed there. The Raiders, they've won 3 games in a row. Credit to them, but it's just skin of their teeth. And that's
also
kind of
luck. Cleveland,
COVID,
Indy, COVID. Also, Indy has Carson Wentz. That's lucky for the other team, too. It's been lucky.
And that's the thing. I think that the Chargers can be more fun in the playoffs, certainly with everything that they have on defense, Herbert on offense. I don't have faith that the Raiders are going to be fun in the playoffs. I'm sorry. This sounds really harsh, but I don't want them to take a spot away from the Chargers. Is anybody rooting for the Raiders in this one.
Of course not. But the earlier version of Derek Carr in this Raiders offense maybe could have been more fun. Like, truly, if you just look at Carr splits with and without Henry Ruggs, I mean, this was a different offense, and that's why you see on the season counting totals that Derek Carr really put together a nice 17-game season. The problem is, again, this was so much more of him being great in the first half of the year, and you can see it with the average depth of target. I mean, nobody just respects his team downfield. They're playing Zay Jones over Deshaun Jackson. And yeah, Hunter Renfro's been absolutely balling out with all these targets, but clearly not the best version of this offense recently. So
even that picture looks like he's just sad to throw the ball to that group of players. Like everybody in Kansas City is rooting for the Raiders tonight.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Because if you're the Chiefs, you totally want the 2-7 matchup to be you versus
everyone in
Las
continental America is rooting for the Chargers. Who wants to see Derek Carr in the playoffs? I'm sorry.
The Chiefs want to see Derek Carr in the playoffs.
Well, okay.
Everybody in Las Vegas and Kansas City, the greater Kansas City area, probably want to see the Raiders win. Everybody else wants to see Herbert win.
Two places.
Let's take this time to look at some of our QB grades that we've had throughout the season as we are coming into the final week of the regular season here. Joe Burrow, top of this list here, 91.7 PFF grade. Tom Brady's right behind him. Then we got Justin Herbert there at number 3. Aaron Rodgers at 4. Kirk Cousins at 5. I know people are going to have words about that. Josh Allen's at 6, Kyler Murray at 7, Ryan Tannehill 8, Mac Jones, a rookie quarterback, at number 9. And then we've got Dak Prescott as well, tied right there at an 81.6 grade. Guys, anybody stand out to you, either where they are on the list, the name being on the list at all? What do you think about these PFF top 10 QB grades here in Week 18?
I mean, look, it depends sort of when you think, when you go back and think, what would this list look like? Going into the season, if you were saying that Joe Burrow would be the number 1 graded quarterback in the NFL this year, I think coming off that knee injury, which was like a pretty devastating knee injury. It wasn't just, a quote-unquote routine ACL. Like, there was a lot of damage to that guy's knee. We were like, is Joe Burrow going to look the same as last year, let alone get better?
Right.
For him to look like the best quarterback in the NFL, playing behind an offensive line that's better than a year ago but still not good, I think it's pretty staggering.
He and Herbert's first 2 years, I don't think any of these rookies in the 2021 class are going to have a first 2 year. Like, they have a lot of catching up to do. Like, to me, it's also like a really interesting idea of like what we took for granted at the quarterback position for young players, Mahomes and Herbert and Burrow and guys like that, Deshaun Watson when he was playing, guys like that. It's like this year we came back down to earth and saw quarterbacks who truly stunk in their first year. Like the first 2 years for Burrow and Herbert, to me, are some of the more impressive collections of play that we've seen in a long time.
So you mentioned it there, Burrow and Herbert. Those are the two that a lot of people are going to talk about. Burrow's number 1, Herbert is number 3. But these two quarterbacks, they're young. They're the face of the franchises already. So that, of course, since we can't just enjoy nice things, we have to make it this divisive. Who are we taking? If you had to take one of these quarterbacks, we see a lot of their numbers right there. If you had to take one of these quarterbacks, you're starting a franchise right now, Sam, who are you taking? You taking Burrow or Herbert?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're happy with either guy, but ultimately, we had this discussion off air beforehand. I think priors still matter a little bit, and Joe Burrow was a fantastic college quarterback. He's become a fantastic NFL quarterback. Dominique Foxworth of ESPN tweeted that he's the player that the Browns thought they were drafting when they took Baker Mayfield, right? This swaggy guy who smokes cigars and just has this attitude, plays with a chip on his shoulder, and balls the hell out with incredible accuracy and finding his number 1 target all the time. I'll stick with Burrow.
I feel like Herbert just has the higher ceiling. And okay, when you see both their ceilings are ridiculous, like you said, Sam, but it kind of takes me back like to Brady and Rodgers, if we could like start everything in like 2010. Like, I know Brady has had the better career and everything, but just based on playing the quarterback, who can throw the football further, who's more athletic and stuff, they all check the box for Herbert. So just from that standpoint, again, both guys already haven't been as good as they are. Like, just athletically, Herbert can do things that Burrow can't. So for me, I'm always going to take that.
Herbert's career, back even at Oregon, has been mired at times with people outside of his control holding him back, right? And you look at that statistic there, big time throw rate's like half that of Joe Burrow's, turnover worthy plays half that of Joe Burrow's. And I think that has to do a lot with the offense. When you're looking at that and saying, okay, well, why is Justin Herbert, like, this sounds weird, but like, Cincinnati doesn't have a better coach than LA, right? They don't. But at some point in time, Burrow just took over and said, hey, this is my team. And you watch those games and they have his fingerprints on them. I need to see that from Herbert, where it's just one of those where it's like, why is Joe Lombardi screwing this guy over? Well, maybe because, why is every single offensive coordinator since Oregon screwing Justin Herbert over and not Joe Burrow? And Joe Burrow, to me, I just think I give him a small edge just because overcomes a lot more. Like and especially Cincinnati. Like, we're talking about a team that earned the first overall pick and the 5th overall pick the last 2 years.
Wouldn't you say, though, that just if you look at the 3 wide receivers, I know you're not the biggest Mike Williams fan in the world, so even if you want to give Keenan benefit of the doubt, so even say he's the best, Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, those are probably your 2 through 4.
I agree with that, but I also think, I agree with that, but the fact is there have been times when Zach Taylor tried to confine Joe Burrow, right? Like tried to make the Denver game, for example. Right. And over the last 2 weeks, it's very clear that like Joe Burrow has just been like, this is my team, I'm taking over. And Herbert's amazing. Like again, we shouldn't have to pick between these 2 guys. Herbert's amazing, but like there's always these like, hey, why is X holding Herbert back? And I just wish like we've never asked like, hey, what's holding Tom Brady back, right? Like what's holding Patrick Mahomes back? And Mahomes not in the top 10 of this group was to me the biggest surprise of the grades this year. But like that to me is where I just give the very slightest of edges to Joe Burrow.
I walked into this building this morning thinking I was going to pick Justin Herbert, and now here at the desk, I'm going to pick Joe Burrow, which is just so crazy because we went through the week and we had the rundown and I put in my notes and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to pick Herbert. Like I love Burrow. Obviously, like Burrow's fantastic. Like everybody on this desk has said, you're splitting hairs. These are 2 fantastic options for franchise quarterbacks. But the more I was kind of just sitting here thinking about it, even when I was asking the question, if I had to point and pick a guy, I'd pick Burrow.
It's because of the cigars. Just you can say it.
Look. The man's just confidence, everything. The locker room videos, the cigars, the overcoming, running the ball so much or in early downs, and just like all of this stuff, man. I know he's got a good receiving cast around him, but Joe Burrow is making so much of that offense click. Justin Herbert does as well. I don't want to take anything away from him. Like Ian said, if we're checking physical boxes, Herbert's probably outweighing Burrow in every single one of them. But when it just comes to playing quarterback, Burrow is just, he's so damn good at it. These guys are so good. I think we're in a treat for how we're going to watch these guys throughout their careers for sure. Hey, before we get to Darius Butler, because we got him on the line, got to remind people about Pristine Auction, your go-to place for signed sports memorabilia. Go check it out, pristineauction.com. Use the promo code PFF, and if you do, you're going to get $10 off whatever the first auction is that you win, because it's all auction style. That's how you guys are going to get some big-time savings and steals for these fantastic items that you'd be looking for, whether it's a certain player, certain team, whatever it is. Head over to pristineauction.com. Check it out. This is your go-to place for signed sports memorabilia. All right, now it's time for our favorite part of the show, where we get to introduce Darius Butler in here on the desk with us. Darius, last week of the regular season, how are we doing this week, man?
Doing great, man. I'm doing great. Ready for some great football today. Week 18, longest season ever. So let's go, man.
Oh, great football. I don't know about great football. I hope he's right. I hope he's right with the great football. I also see this is the week that he's rocking the PFF hat. So I'm gonna say that it's a good omen. We're gonna get some good football today. I don't know if we're gonna get it in this game, but the game that we wanted to preview with you, Darius, your Indianapolis Colts going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a massive line. Colts are favored by more than 2 touchdowns. They're favored by 15.5 points. There's so much going on here, right? Jaguars lose this game. They lock up the #1 overall pick. There's fans, so they're showing up as clowns to the stadium. We've got sponsors trying to bail on this game. I mean, it's week 18 if we have ever seen one. Darius, what do you think about this game? Who do you think is going to come out on top? I'll say in a spread form, because I got to think that you're probably not taking the Jags here.
Yeah, I mean, this is an easy money line pick. But, the Colts, this is a win and get in for them, obviously. After a loss last week, the Raiders didn't handle business. But I think they win. They handed it to Taylor a bunch, but I think the Jags cover, man. They get an ugly cover. We haven't won down there. The Colts haven't won down there since 2014. This team is just always finding an annoying, kind of like a thorn in the side. So I think they find a way to cover. maybe by half a point, who knows? But I think the Jags, they will be I'll ruin it now. They'll be my dog of the day to actually cover the spread, but I got the Colts winning and JT going over $130 on the ground.
Wow, he's going with the Jags. Eric, what do you think about this one? With the line being 15.5,
yeah.
What do you think about Darius's call to keep it within?
After adjusting for the clowns.
Yes,
you have to adjust for the clowns.
Have the clowns move the line at all in
this is the second consecutive year that the Jags and the Colts played in the final week of the year. Last year, actually, that game was tied at 14. There was in basically the third or fourth quarter, and a lot of people were, a lot of Dolphins fans are really jacked up for the Jacksonville Jaguars to help out their interstate rival. But it ultimately ended up 14. I believe the spread last year was 14.5. I actually think this Jaguars team is much more wretched than last year's one. And so I'm probably going, the lock of the week that we had, PFF forecast with me and George Shahuri every Wednesday night and then every Monday morning. Our pick of the week was Colts minus 15.5. So we're going directly against Darius here, which is not necessarily what I like, given how well Darius has picked against the spread, especially of late. But yeah, that's the one that we like. I also think one of the best picks of the day is Jonathan Taylor over 20.5 carries. Ian had the specific number that Jonathan Taylor needed to be the 8th 2,000-yard rusher in the history of the NFL. 266. He's going to need 20.5 carries or more to get over that. I'm going to bet that over there because personal accomplishments matter, especially in a game that the Colts absolutely need to make the playoffs.
Darius, we brought up Jonathan Taylor. You did as well. We talked about him in an MVP discussion, Offensive Player of the Year discussion. Where do you have him? We've already kind of talked about it here on this table, but where do you have him, like with MVP, with Offensive Player of the Year? Kind of like Eric was saying, recognizing the kind of year that he has had.
Yeah, I mean, he's had an incredible year. But, it's, quarterback. It's a quarterback award, and kind of as it should be because if you're really talking about who's most valuable. So you got Brady, you got Aaron Rodgers. I think it's really a one-man race right now with A-Rod in that MVP discussion. But Offensive Player of the Year, even with the tremendous year that JT is having, Cooper Kupp is right up there in that conversation with him as well. But I would have to go JT just because, like I said before, it is a quarterback-driven league. And that quarterback, even if you look at the stats and the turnovers and all these things, and it looked great. But if you actually watch the film, nobody fears Carson Wentz when you line it up and playing that team. So everything goes through 2-8. Good offensive line, down 4 offensive linemen, doesn't matter. 2-8 is going to carry that team and get his numbers. So he's my Offensive Player of the Year this year. But Aaron Rodgers would be the MVP.
Yeah, nobody fears Carson Wentz except for the Colts. I wanted to make sure that joke didn't go to the wayside because it was a zinger. Sam, what do you think about this match?
Except his own team. Yeah, I mean, it says something about this game that you need the bet, right? You need to have something invested in this game. Or
I feel like that's the Week 18 theme. Or if you've never betted, no week has ever been better to get some skin in the game,
right? Sam. If the Jags were to win this game, right? I think that's what you're going to talk about. This is it's a 9% chance for the Jags to win this game. Shit's happened, right? Buffalo lost to this team.
Looks over his shoulder.
Yeah. If the Jags win this game, then the Sunday Night Football game is a dump and chase, kneel down fest. Both teams get in with a tie.
That's your rooting interest in this game, right? Is that if Jacksonville wins, there is literally zero motivation for either of the two teams who play last in the game.
There's actually anti-motivation
to do anything other than kneel the game out and take a tie. Yeah, take a mutually assured tie, which puts them both into the playoffs. Yeah, I get. And let's face it, who doesn't want to see that?
There's anti-motivation actually, right? Because it's different. There's no motivation would be you get in with a win or a loss, and let's just tie. There's actually anti-motivation for both of these teams in the sense that some things could go right enough for Las Vegas to make it even with the loss, but the Chargers don't get in with a loss. So if they just kind of handshake agree, I know Butler, Darius, you played in the league. There are days in practice, right, where you go against each other and the scout team guy, you're like, look, man, my shoulder hurts. You got to be, I don't want that jam. I don't want that jam today. The entire time is going to be the Vegas Raiders and the Chargers being hey,
and this has happened in other sports.
Kneel this game out.
It's definitely some brother-in-law going on in practice, like you said, with the scout team. But I mean, these guys, and this is still Raiders Chargers. It's and I know rivalries aren't everywhere in the NFL. This is one of the very few games I went to as a fan. My good friend Tyvon Branch was a Raiders safety, and I went to this game, and no lie, I felt like I was like I was in prison. They had the bathrooms had the full length latrines, whatever they're called, and I think this will be a rivalry. This will be a tough game, man. Rick is coaching those guys over there. Staley's coaching his guys over there. They're going to go out there and try to win. I know analytics is taking over the game and take a knee, and that's never happened. Come on, man. Raiders, Chargers.
By the way,
18. I just said it's going to be some great.
The analytics say to tie the football game.
As somebody who actually, I'll speak for all of analytics when I say this. We don't want a tie game.
Okay. I thought we were gonna.
No, it's more of the, and I agree with you. I remember I've never seen a team play so like you remember the 2010 Packers were a 6 seed and like they won the Super Bowl that year, and the Bears had like the 2 seed wrapped up, and all they had to do was go into Lambeau and win. Of course, Jay Cutler, not a win in Lambeau guy. Like, I've never seen a team play harder to try to keep a team out of the playoffs than the Bears did against the Packers that year, and they were right because the Packers ran the table after. Like, I do agree that like if you're the Raiders, even if like the confluence of events that ends up with you not even having to win the game to get in, I don't want to see Justin Herbert in the playoffs. Like, I'm going to play hard to get his ass out of there because the guy's a stud, and like I do think that takes over more than this whole like, hey, let's just have a gentleman's agreement and tie and both make the playoffs. And all of this is academic anyway because the Jags aren't winning. But anyway.
Full circle. This is good. This brings it back. You said the Jags. I didn't mean to cut you off because we kind of got derailed there, but like Colts Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm just saying that's the only thing to root for in this game. If you have a bet on it or the chaos of two teams actually being motivated.
Chris finds out you're rooting for the Jags to win this game, and then his game turns into a kneel fest.
He's heard it on the podcast. He understands that. Look, my point with Chris, right? The man's been doing his job for a long time. He's very, very good at it, but it's kind of the same every week, right? He needs to put himself out of his comfort zone.
He had a team tank on his broadcast last year in the fourth quarter.
He has to put himself out of his comfort zone and have to commentate on an hour's worth of two teams kneeling it out. I'm just saying that's the challenge the man needs at this point in his career.
Well, you guys are saying, okay, it's more likely than not the Jaguars do not win this game, which kind of brings us to the draft order. And you did a cool thing earlier this week where we projected the draft order. So we have the draft order as it stands right now, but we were able to kind of run through some simulations and project the most likely draft order, at least in the top 10. Jaguars still have the number 1 spot. It is most likely, like you said, 9% chance for them to win this game. Yep. They already have the number 1 overall pick. They're going to lock that up right there at number 1. Detroit, number 2, most likely spot. Houston, number 3. Jets and Giants, then 4 and 5. Carolina, most likely spot at number 6. And then again, Jets and Giants right after that, which makes it a big-time New York-focused top 10. And then Denver there at number 9 or number 10, the most likely spots for them, depending on what happens.
Yeah, I think the big ones that could change, right, is like I don't think like Detroit could win against Green Bay this week. That game went from like an 11-point spread to like a 3-point spread, and then that could motivate the Jaguars to lose this game. Houston, I think actually Houston's going to play hard today against the Titans to sort of like screw over their divisional rival out of the 1 seed. So there could be some shaking up, but yeah, for the most part, all the teams that are picking in the top are also underdogs in the game, and all of the guys, and there's going to be some scoreboard watching with the interesting thing this year with the Jets holding the Seahawks pick, I believe the Giants holding the Chicago's pick. Yeah. So like you have some interesting like scoreboard watching, but even Seattle and Chicago, by virtue of being a top 10 picking team, they're underdogs this week too. So like for the most part, like the draft order now is probably going to be the draft order with a few changes coming up.
It's all going to be locked up after we get done with the games here today. So are our Dare I Say picks. So some of the Dare I Say picks. If you guys are new here, we've had a reoccurring segment here on the show. Ian's got his hands in his, he got his head in his hands already about this.
Over these? Do we have to?
Because Darius is on the show, we've come up with a segment called Dare
Did anybody even get close?
Say.
No.
I mean, besides me.
Whoa.
No.
We got no.
The only one still alive is yours, and that's only because it hasn't had a chance to be disproved yet.
Hey,
still alive, baby.
Does the first round bye count as a win? That's a
no.
Okay,
no. This is the whole point of me picking this. Okay. All right. So we're gonna break them down. We're gonna go through all the Dare I Says. I guess we're gonna start with mine. Everybody's coming after me here. Week 1, my very first Dare I Say was that the Green Bay Packers will not win a playoff game. Right. And I either believed that they were going to struggle to the point where they weren't going to get the first round bye, they were going to lose in the first round, or they were going to get the bye, and they were going to have to play a better team when they first went out there. A couple weeks off, a little rust, the team's on a hot streak, Green Bay's not winning it.
This was like that game where the way of winning is to just sit there and do nothing. The way of winning this was to have a, dare I say, that simply can't be disproven until like a week and a half into the playoffs.
So what you're saying is, I'm really good at this.
No, I'm saying
I got a dub in the first game that you mentioned. Getting the dub now. If Green Bay loses their first game, you guys aren't going to hear the end of it from me. Okay, my second one, not as good. Pittsburgh Steelers will be picking in the top 5 this season. That didn't really. Should have been close. I think should have been close.
I like that better than the right one.
And then the final one I had was the worst one. The Browns will win the AFC North. Darius, what do you think about my 3, dare I say, there?
I mean, the Packers one, I think, you're going to be dead wrong about that. And I think the bye week should count as a win, but, I don't make the rules here. But they're getting a couple All-Pros back. I think they're going to win their first game. The Browns one, that wasn't too bad going into it. Everybody had that one. I mean, well, not everybody, but a lot of people expected the Browns to take that next step, expected Baker to take that next step. And now we're looking at the Browns being stuck with Baker most likely for another year. So, that Green Bay Packers, I think it'll end up being terrible. But like you said, we still got time, so we'll see.
We do still got time. Sam.
Yeah.
Since you wanted to talk so much about mine, let's now talk about yours. The first, dare I say, that you had, the Washington football team will cruise to the NFC East title. Your second one was that the Seahawks will miss the playoffs for only the second time in Russell Wilson's career. There you go on that one. You nailed that one. And the third one is you said that we are heading towards an inevitable Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick Super Bowl.
I mean, look, that one's still up. That one's
right. You're coming out after me.
It's
your most recent one was doing the same thing.
Patriots didn't even win their own division, but yeah, go for it.
Like that stopped them in the past. It's not. Look, it's not gonna. It's less likely than it was when I said it, but it's still up in the air. It's still possible. The second one nailed it. The first one, look, cruises mean something different now than they did a couple of years ago. That's all I'm saying. It used to be a nice, fun time where everybody goes.
How you have spun this every time we bring it up is my favorite part. Jeez. Darius, what did you think about his 3?
I mean, obviously the one he nailed, but the football team one, I don't know. Woo, that was a scorching hot take, especially I think at that point Ryan Fitzpatrick was still the quarterback. I think Heineke gave him a better shot to do that this year, but obviously the Cowboys ran that division from start to finish.
Yeah.
And you know the Seahawks one though, so I mean that's still a fair grade. And you start Patriots. I'm going to give them no shot to get to the Super Bowl. If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have been on the train with you, but I fell off that train. Mac Jones hit that wall. I don't see it happening this year.
Maybe the real cruise for Washington were the friends that we made along the way.
Ian, to Eric and then move. No. Oh.
Going to you next. We got to go to you. We got to go to you next because I knew that you were going to pull that. Your first one, Ezekiel Elliott will score 20 touchdowns this season.
He didn't get there, just to be clear.
What did we get?
I saw he had 10 rushing. Did he have any receiving?
I think he had 12. 12 going into yesterday, and then didn't he waddle in yesterday?
Over 1,000 yards on the year.
Give or take 8 more. Like that's just game of inches.
Ball bounces a different way. He gets 8 touchdowns one game instead of 0. You were right there. You were right there for it. Next one, Patrick
Mahomes. The Cowboys scored like the most touchdowns ever.
They had the most different.
So he was right. Process.
You're close.
Process. Thank you.
Your second one was Mahomes will pass for 60 touchdowns this year. Pass for 37.
I swear to God, I said this too, and that's exactly when he fell off a cliff. Like it got rough. I think he threw 5 touchdowns against Washington, and I just jinxed him straight to this. So my bad, Pat.
And then your last one was, wow, I hate everyone's picks so much. Alvin Kamara, fantasy football MVP for the second straight year.
It was close.
How did he do?
No, it wasn't close. That was arguably my worst pick. You guys, might not know that, but yeah, I think that was maybe somehow the worst.
I like yours because it's the first one was obviously not going to go so well. So every step along the way, you just went, all right, I got to go bigger. We got to get this back. It's like a dude trying to win it all back on the roulette wheel. Everything on black.
Speaking of,
yes.
What about my Jets take?
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, we're getting to yours. Your very first one was the Jets will be, quote, very competitive in the AFC.
I'm willing to back this up. Okay, the Jets. The Jets. Okay, here we go. The Jets' first win this season was against whom?
I couldn't tell you.
The Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans have which seed in the AFC right now? The 1 seed. The Jets beat the Titans. There's one.
So you're saying one game.
Who won the AFC North this year? The Cincinnati Bengals. Who beat them this year? The New York Jets. And lastly, I'm sitting here at the Bengals game against the Chiefs last week. Trevor Sikkema, I'm not going to judge the guy. He's a Bucs fan. Not paying any attention to what Joe Burrow's doing. He's on his phone.
AB's taking his shirt off, brother.
Grinding out a Bucs game because what? Because the Jets had them on the ropes. The Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Jets had that team on the ropes until the last, 2 seconds of that game? The Jets were competitive this year.
You know what? I agree with Eric. He put his heart and soul into that.
Didn't we just, what was the draft order again that we just went over?
Jets are picking fourth, Darius. Fourth.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And I know you guys, everybody, a lot of people in that building were pretty high on Zach Wilson coming into this year and Trevor Lawrence. You guys thought they were going to hit the win totals and do. We got to pump our brakes on the Jets. I mean, hopefully
Robert Salah
will be there for a couple more years.
Allegedly lost 25 pounds this year.
It did get better towards the end, and I think Zach Wilson will turn out to be a good quarterback. But it's going to take at least 3 years for that organization to be competitive in his own division.
Robert Salah will weigh 150 pounds by then, according to how much weight he's lost this year.
Stressed out, man.
He's so sick to his stomach watching his offense play, he can't eat.
He can't even eat.
And his defense. His defense has been as bad. That's the thing driving him around the
Well, they were competitive. Let's take a step back.
You know what? That was it. That was a fiery argument. It's wrong, but it was a
fiery is what's going on.
Your second, dare I say, was we'll all forget about the rookie QB struggles. Don't think that we've all forgotten about that. Darius literally just brought it up 15 seconds ago.
I mean, Blake Bortles had better stats his rookie year than Trevor Lawrence has this year. It's been bad. I was wrong there. I do think, though, look, if Davis Mills could pull one more for my Chiefs today, one more. Davis Mills has actually been encouraging. Not good. Encouraging.
The sole purpose of Davis Mills is to provide context with just how bad Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson have been. The only role he takes right now is that that's what you should be looking like. Not good, but
encouraging.
Just enough encouragement to be okay, maybe in the future. And that's the only thing he brings.
And we get to make fun of Austin's.
Last one, you were gone. Austin sat in for you. Austin, his very bold take was the guy who is Vegas's top odds to be the number 1 overall pick, Aiden Hutchinson, will be the number 1 overall pick. Thanks, Austin. We really appreciate you embracing the Dare I Say segment.
Hey, I know I don't want to derail too much. I know we just brought up the rookie quarterbacks, and you guys would know better than I would at this point. Why has Trevor Lawrence stunk so bad? I expected what was going on with Zach Wilson, but Trevor Lawrence, he was the Andrew Luck of this class. What has it been over there?
The honest to God truth, the easiest answer is that the Jaguars are just an absolute train fire, right?
That is the answer, but it goes deeper.
But I think, if you look at statistically speaking, Trevor Lawrence, the hard part about Lawrence is that he was dubbed the number 1 overall pick in the 2021 draft in January of 2019, right? And he was so amazing as a true freshman at Clemson. But you actually look at sort of his career arc, and it kind of didn't arc, right? He was amazing at the beginning and kind of stayed the same the whole time. And then in the ACC, where, frankly, you weren't playing elite defenses every single week.
Right.
And then you come up for air in how he played, let's say, against LSU. Even against Ohio State in the 2019 semifinals, it was kind of he had a couple nice runs and stuff, but he wasn't, brilliant the way he was against Bama in 18. And then, of course, they lose in the first round to Ohio State last year. His college career statistically, we were all making concessions as data scientists Lawrence. We're like, yeah, it's not the greatest, but I can make a bunch of excuses for why this data doesn't look as good necessarily as Zach Wilson, which again, caveat or laugh at that all you want, but even like Justin Fields, like those guys had better statistical profiles coming out than Lawrence. It was just like the scouts loved Lawrence for obvious reasons.
Well, it was also how Lawrence played at Clemson, right? There's a lot of things that go into why he's struggling with this Jaguars team. Well, first and foremost, Urban Meyer, who just absolutely, it was a train wreck during his entire tenure there. Okay, you look at that wide receiver room. I believe no other team has dropped as many passes as the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver.
You look at Treadwell is his number one wide receiver.
Right, you look at a running back room where James Robinson is playing well, is a good running back, and they won't hand him the football, right? That's just incompetence there. The offensive line is fine, but it's basically just fine. Then you go back to kind of what Trevor Lawrence was at Clemson, and really that final year, a lot of his stuff was quick game things. It was screens, it was slants,
Very
it was
collegey.
Right, it was extremely collegey. And when you talked about Clemson being more talented than everybody else, they didn't need Trevor Lawrence to throw it deep down the field, so he often did not. Now, of course, there were those flashes of the back shoulder throws to the sideline on a rope, things in the tight window over the middle. We would see the ability there, which of course made us still think this guy is very, very good. But I always kind of thought that it was going to be a little bit of a learning curve even for Trevor Lawrence because he was coming from such an offense that Darius just mentioned. Super collegey, very quick hit, not a ton of thinking involved, just dumping it off the guys in Clemson, simply being better than everybody else. It was always going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and unfortunately, he didn't even get the plane to do that because Urban's environment was so bad.
This
so
is
that's
like
kind of what I think about
Goff
Lawrence.
rookie year bad, though. I mean, have we ever seen a quarterback be this bad and turn around to be like, again, like Darius said, Andrew Luck level good?
Well, I think unlike the Rams, like I don't know if the Jacksonville Jaguars have it in them, right, to make a McVay hire, right? Because you're right. Goff, the last 7 games of his rookie year was horrendous, and it did not look promising at all. From day one, McVay made Goff look competent.
One of the biggest turnarounds we've ever seen in PFF grades in year 1 to beyond is Matthew Stafford. Now maybe Trevor Lawrence's ceiling starts to get re-projected from Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, John Elway to Matthew Stafford, which is still good. Like Stafford is a good quarterback, but probably never becomes like the superstar that everybody always waits for. Like maybe Lawrence's career ends up a little bit more like that, where we say this guy's got generational talent, but it never quite realizes he just is a good quarterback.
Stafford had that was my draft. Stafford had a freakish arm, as you guys obviously know. It still does, but yeah, it was just weird watching Lawrence go through a stretch. I think it was 7-8 games where he threw 1 touchdown pass like that. I mean, I've seen quarterbacks go to bad teams and bad surrounding cast, but that was just a head scratch. So I had to ask you guys. Sorry to derail the conversation.
No, that was good. Like it was a combination of a lot of things. Unfortunately for Lawrence, we were hoping that the environment around him gets a lot better. They get some good wide receivers. They get some coaches that can actually let him progress, and I think he'll be okay. Darius, you gave us
Urban Meyer might have been holding that ship together.
Oh.
Let's just agree never to talk about
I mean, your dare I say was Herbert winning MVP, Chargers Super Bowl contender, right? That was the big one that you were hanging your hat on.
Yeah, Justin Herbert MVP, probably a year too early, but I mean, he had if his team around him, special teams, defense, if they would have held up there and they could have won 2-3 more games, I think he would have seriously been in that conversation. And then the other one was the quarterback rooms in the NFC West, who had the best one, and I said the 49ers did. Now, going into the playoffs, just like a couple of you guys at the table, I think I still have a chance for this to ring true. Obviously, what's going on in Seattle, I think they may be parting ways after this season. Kyler Murray, he's kind of been iffy this last stretch. Matt Stafford throws too many pick sixes, so Jimmy G gets his thumb figured out. Trey Lance came in and played well last week. So it's still possible for this one to ring true.
We talked about Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert right before we had you on. You were starting a franchise. Who you taking, Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert?
I'm still with Herbert, but every snap I watch Joe Burrow, I love him even more. But I mean, it's the same with Herbert. But I really, really like Burrow, especially if he's able to cut down those sacks, which I'm sure he will as he matures. But his intangibles, his leadership, his accuracy, ball placement, I just love everything about the kid.
All right, I know we got your dog of the day. You're taking the Jags to cover getting those 15.5 points. What about a best bet? What's your best bet here for Week 18?
That's bad. See, I went with a couple teams who are preparing for the playoffs and other teams who are, they got their Airbnbs and their trips picked already. So I'm going with the Titans. The Titans 10-point favorites over the Texans. I think they go and handle business to lock up the 1 seed. Chiefs got their win yesterday, so they know they have to handle business today. So I think they will. And then the Patriots, Dolphins. I think the Patriots will go. I mean, the Dolphins, I think that defense right now at least is built to neutralize speed. Like if you try to spread them out on offense, if you got a quarterback it doesn't know what's really going on, they're going to get after you. They're going to pressure you until you make mistakes. Tennessee lined up and just ran it down their throat last week in an ugly game. I think the Patriots come in and try to do the same.
All right, final thoughts from everybody. I want to get Kendall's final thoughts as well.
I still can't even believe that Darius picked a cat as his dog of the day.
That's just one of those teams, man. They know the coach. They know it's a lot on the table for the coach. Maybe Trevor Lawrence comes out and throws for 300 today and only loses by 10. Who knows?
It really is Week 18.
Week 18. I mean, you left it for the very end. You left it for the very end. I was blindsided. That was good on you. That was good on you. You are in playoff form at this point.
Week 18 used to be a playoff week. I'm already ready.
Kendall, do you have any final thoughts from you that aren't awful puns that I have to think about for the rest of the day?
No, I'm leaving that to Eric. No, I mean, my Seahawks are bad. The Broncos are worse. So I'm hanging out. You guys get to root for your really good teams, and I'll just live vicariously through you guys. So that's about it.
A lot of very interesting football today. That's all I'll say. That's the word that I'll use. Interesting.
It's an interesting week.
Must watch for maybe some unorthodox reasons here in the NFL for Week 18. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching the show. For Darius Butler, for Kendall Valenzuela, Ian Hartitz, Eric Eager, and Sam Monson, I am Trevor Sikkema. Enjoy a wacky Week 18. We'll see you to cover all the playoff action this time next week.